Hello everyone, I'm Yona Paley and I believe genealogy is fun, and today I want to talk to you about something really special, about DNA. No, not the song by Kendrick Lamar, that one is really nice too, but what I want to talk to you about is the genetic components that make up who you are. You might be asking, why am I drinking this glass of wine? Well, the truth of the matter is I bought this bottle of wine for about $2 here at the supermarket in Romania where I'm at. And the reason I bought this wine is to celebrate the fact that I have now identified 100 DNA relatives of mine. Now, you might be thinking, 100 DNA relatives? That's a lot of people. And yes, it is. But today I'm going to show you exactly how I did that and walk you through it. Because as we know, one of the key reasons people do genealogy is to identify relatives of theirs. And, sometimes you're looking for cousins who may have knowledge about the family that you don't have. Or maybe your motivation is just to find as many relatives as you can. That's been one of my motivations ever since I've learned about DNA testing, and it's worked out pretty well so far for me. So before we begin, just make sure to demolish the like button. Also, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I post new videos. So thank you so much for doing that. And with that being said, here is a list of all of the DNA relatives that I have on the various accounts, which I'll get into. And of course, because the vast majority of these people are living, I wasn't able to put the names of the people, so I actually just ordered them by relationship. So, we've got people like my mom, my grandmother, my grandaunt, whose kits I manage. But then you start getting into the more distant relatives, first cousins, second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins, all the way to a couple of fifth cousins and even a few distant sixth cousins. And if you look at this, it seems to be pretty random as to which relationships have the most number of matches. So coming in at number 1 are my third cousins once removed, whom I've identified 17 of. And coming in at second, we have a tie for second cousins once removed and fourth cousins one time removed. I've also got 9 fifth cousins and 9 second cousin 2 times removed. You've also got a couple of outliers, such as, I have a double first cousin 2 times removed and some half cousins and things like this. But overall, it seems to run the gamut pretty well of the kinds of relatives that I would be able to identify in DNA kits. So your big question is probably, how on earth were you able to do this? How were you able to identify 100 people to figure out exactly how you're related to? And I'm going to answer this in multiple ways. So the first thing I'm going to say is that I cheated a little bit in that not all of these matches come from my DNA kit. A huge amount of them, in fact the majority of them, come from a couple of other DNA kits that I manage, which is my grandmother, so my mom's mom, and also my grandaunt, so my grandfather's sister. And those 2 kits, because of how far back they are, have proved to be the most useful in terms of identifying DNA matches. All the relationships that I've listed in this list is how they are related in relation to me, not in relation to the kit in which I matched them in, just to keep things simple. But the truth of the matter is I would never have been able to identify most of these on my own just using my DNA kit. And the big reason for that is, of course, that the further back you go, the more useful a DNA kit gets. So yeah, make sure to test the people as far back as possible, because you're just going to share a lot more DNA with a distant relative if, let's say, your grandmother took a DNA kit than if you did. Another important thing is to upload to as many websites as possible. So I've tested with Ancestry, but I've uploaded to other sites like MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, GEDmatch, and Living DNA. And this is pretty intuitive. The more sites you're on, the greater the pool of potential relatives that you're going to have. Now, I actually don't have my or any of my family's kits up on 23andMe. And the reason for this is that I am a cheapskate, and 23andMe and Ancestry have this thing where you can't upload to them from any other sites. So since I tested with Ancestry, I could upload to all of them except 23andMe. But if I want to get a kit on 23andMe, I've got to buy another kit, take another test. One of these days I'm going to do it, but that's the only reason why I've essentially still limited my pool of matches. And if you test on both 23andMe and Ancestry, you'll have an even bigger pool than I have. Another thing, which is probably the most important in terms of figuring out DNA matches, is that I have a very well-researched family tree with a lot of paper documents backing it up. Now, a lot of people think that when you take a DNA test, you're going to spit into a cup and get your results back and you'll just have this whole family tree to know. But that's not the case. You take the test, but it's only as good as the research that you've done. So I tend to do a lot of descendancy research. Anytime I discover an ancestor and their siblings, I try to trace those lines down as far as I can to identify as many second, third, fourth, fifth, even sixth, sometimes seventh cousins as I can. And one of the reasons I do this, besides for curiosity, is so that I can figure out some of these more distant DNA matches that might share relatives, but without having that documentation backing it up, I would never be able to figure it out. So your DNA kit is usually only as good as your paper trail. Another thing that I like to use is the shared matches function on sites like Ancestry, and also triangulation on websites with a chromosome browser like MyHeritage. And this is really important because when you figure out a DNA match, you can check all the matches that you share in common with them, or you can check with triangulation, which I've done another episode on, what segments you share with them. And this can often let you know what line a mysterious match is related along. So this is super, super important. You figure out matches and then you use those figured out matches to figure out more matches. Last but not least, the thing that ties this all together is simply being as methodical and patient as possible. So I keep a spreadsheet of every single DNA match that I figure out. I also sit back a lot of the times and am just patient, because you never know when somebody else is going to take a DNA test. There have been branches that I thought I would never ever solve and put them on the back burner, and then one day I would log on to Ancestry or MyHeritage and there would be a huge DNA match that popped up that somebody had just taken a test, and I was able to solve a family mystery. So it's important to keep notes, on your list of matches. If you think you know what line someone's related along, just make a little note of it. Most of the sites will have an option to make a note, and you can also even group them into different groups. This is really important because when you finally discover something new, you can just hit a home run, knock it out of the park. You've already got the details in place to figure out exactly where the relationship lies. So anyway, folks, that's the episode. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and also be sure to follow me on social media. I've included links down below to both my Instagram and my Twitter. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.